it's Katie, and today I'm gonna make some kimchi. So I thought I would show you how I make my kimchi. This video is specifically for Tom at Old Man Cooking. He told me he was interested in fermentation, and he asked me specifically about kimchi. So I wanted to show you how I make my kimchi. I did a collaboration with Tom at the beginning of the summer, so I hope you've had a chance to check out his channel. If you haven't checked it out already, be sure to check it out. He does cooking videos, just really laid back, delicious looking, just home cooking, cooking videos. Nothing pretentious, nothing complicated. He's just a really good guy, and he's been a really good supporter of my channel. So be sure to check him out. I will put links to his channel in the description box. But I'm gonna start my kimchi with my Napa cabbage, and you can really make kimchi out of any kind of cabbage if you can't find Napa cabbage, but even regular grocery stores will have Napa cabbage now. So I have two sort of medium heads, and these are about 2.5 pounds each. So it's gonna be about 5 pounds of cabbage altogether. That's just sort of an approximation. So I'm going to go ahead and chop these up, and I'll show you how to do that next. So I just pulled the outside leaves off of my cabbage here, and traditionally the cabbage is just cut into quarters. So I'm just cutting about 3 inches up, and then open it from the bottom and just tear the rest of the way up. You have 2 halves, and then you would do it again to cut your halves into quarters. And this is sort of the traditional way, and then you would ferment this whole piece. Then you would cut it up however you wanted to use it after it was done. But I like to cut it up before I ferment it. That way it makes it easier to mix up, it makes it easier to pack into the fermentation vessel, and it makes it easier to serve. So I'm just cutting it up into about 1.5 inch pieces, and I'm just gonna throw that into my sink with all of the rest of it. So just kind of coarsely chop it, throw it in the sink. Now once I have it in my sink, I'm just gonna rinse it. Some cool water. Once I have the cabbage all rinsed, I'm just going to plug my sink and start to fill the sink up with some cool water so it can soak. So next I'm going to add some salt to the soaking water. You want about 1/4 cup. I have just a little bit under, that's all I had. I'm just gonna go ahead and add it. You could pre-dissolve the salt too if you wanted to, but I'm just gonna mix it up here in the same soaking water. So we're just gonna let this sit in this sink full of salty water for about 45 minutes to an hour. While the cabbage is soaking, I'm gonna prep the rest of my veggie ingredients. And the original recipe on Dr. Ben Kim's blog is just cabbage, and then there's scallions and the garlic and ginger. But I like to add a little bit of color and a little bit of different contrast and texture. So I add carrots. I have about 5 carrots, about 8 scallions, 2 small heads of garlic, so this is probably 15 cloves of garlic, and then this Korean radish. I think it's about 1.5 pounds. I probably won't use this whole amount. So I'm gonna peel the Korean radish. So just peel it with a vegetable peeler. It's really easy to peel. And you can add as much or as little of any of these ingredients, whatever you like, whatever looks good to you. Or if you don't like any of these ingredients, or if they're hard to find, you can omit them. Really just the cabbage, garlic, ginger is really all you need. So I like to cut matchsticks for the radish as well as the carrot. So I just cut slices, kind of stack them up, and then cut matchsticks. So I'm going to put about this much. This is probably about 2 cups of matchstick daikon I'm going to put in my bowl. For the scallions, I'm just going to thinly slice the whites, and then for the greens I'll slice them a little bit thicker. So about 1/4 inch for the white part, and then once I get up into the green part, I'll go more like 1/2 inch. All right, and now these can go into the bowl. For the garlic, you can just do a rough mince, but I really like kind of large pieces of garlic. I like to bite into them and get that really pungent garlic flavor. So I'm going to slice them, just really thin slices. You can also hold off and just puree the garlic when we do the red pepper paste. But like I said, I like the sort of chunks or large slices of garlic. So there's all my garlic sliced up, and it goes into the bowl with everything else. And the carrots I'm also gonna do matchsticks, so the same thing, cut them into planks, and then stack the planks, cut them into matchsticks. You could cut them into just like rounds or coins too if you like. I really like the matchstick. Don't cut your finger off, that's all I ask. Alright, so that's my 5 carrots. It's probably also about 2 cups, maybe 3. And I'm going to look at it before I finish up, and if it looks like it needs a little something else, I can add it. And to me that looks pretty balanced. A little bit of everything. Now it's perfect. Alright, so we'll set this aside and we'll start working on the red pepper paste. Now normally kimchi recipes have you make sort of a porridge out of rice flour and water, and you cook it on the stove, and it just makes sort of a thick slurry that you would add your red pepper flakes to make your red pepper paste. And then to sweeten it up, you usually add sugar to it. This recipe is a little bit different, and one of the biggest reasons why I like this recipe, instead of doing that, you're gonna do sort of a puree of apples, pears, onions, and then ginger. And that's going to give you sort of that thick viscosity for your paste, and it's also going to add the sweetness from natural sources instead of adding sugar. So I have, this is a gala apple, I think. You want sort of a sweet apple. Whatever you have on hand will really work. And then 1 pear. You want to make sure it's pretty ripe. This is just a Bartlett pear. If you want to, instead of using the apple and pear, you could use Asian pear. But it's a lot more cost effective to go ahead and use just a regular apple and a regular pear. And then I have an onion and then about 1 inch of garlic. And I'm just gonna put all of this in my Vitamix or any sort of blender or food processor and puree it till it's nice and smooth. Okay, so now I'm going to add my apple, pear, onion, and ginger puree. Next I'm gonna add some fish sauce. This is optional, and it's to taste, so however much that you want. If you want to leave this out the way that I'm making, then it would be vegan. If you want to add some umami flavor without adding the fish sauce, you can add seaweed like wakame to give sort of that same flavor as the fish sauce. So I'm gonna add about 1/4 cup. And the last ingredient in the red pepper paste is the red pepper powder. This is Korean red pepper powder. This is basically just the fruit of the pepper that's been dried and pulverized without the seeds in the membrane. So it has a lot of flavor, and it is hot, but it's not really all that hot for the amount that we're gonna put in. So this is the brand that I got, CJ, I think that's the brand name. And it says red pepper powder, and I got this one because it specifically said for kimchi, so I knew I was getting the right one. I got this very large package. This is 3 pounds, and I think it was around $20, but it will make many batches of kimchi. You can of course get a smaller package. I just thought this was the best value since I was going to be using it for a lot. So be sure to look for some clue like that. It's a really beautiful sort of brick red color, and it smells so good. So I'm gonna add probably about 1/2 cup of this, and like I said, it's not as hot as you would think if you're thinking of like cayenne pepper or something. So you can add quite a bit without it becoming too hot. I like my kimchi hot. If you don't want your kimchi hot at all, you can totally omit this and make a white kimchi. But for me, the red color and the spice and the flavor from the red pepper powder is kind of the whole point for me. So I'm just gonna stir that around and make sure it looks like a good amount. Just mix all of these ingredients together, and it looks pretty good to me. So that was a half a cup that I added for this amount of cabbage. All right, so now the only thing we have left to add is the cabbage that's been wilting. So my cabbage has been soaking for an hour while I was doing everything else, and it's going a little slower than I would like. I didn't have quite as much salt as I should have. And when you're checking your cabbage, especially these rib parts, you want it to kind of bend without snapping. So when it's really fresh and crispy, it'll snap like that. That means it's not wilted enough. But I'm gonna have to press forward, so, you know. Kimchi and fermentation in general is very forgiving. So I'm just gonna drain the salt water away, and I will rinse it with some fresh water a little bit, and then let it drain very, very well. Okay, and what I'm gonna do, because it's not really as wilted as I would like and more moisture is gonna come out of this, you don't want a ton of moisture to come out and dilute your red pepper paste and kind of make your kimchi taste bland. So I wanna get as much water off of here as possible, since more and more water is gonna leach out of this cabbage as it ferments. So I'm gonna use my salad spinner to get this as dry as possible, and then I will mix it in with all the rest of the ingredients. So that's all of the cabbage out of the salad spinner, and it's looking a lot better than I thought. It's not perfectly wilted, but it's better. I don't know if running it through the salad spinner helped all that much, or if it just looked a little bit crispier in the water than it really was. I'm just going to toss this to coat. All right, so there's my finished kimchi, and you want to look at it, make sure it looks good. Plenty of carrots, plenty of green onions, plenty of red pepper paste. You want to taste it. The flavor will develop as it ferments and as it sits in your fridge, but it should taste really good right now. So now I just need to pack this into some jars. You can use mason jars, you can use Fido jars, canning jars. This is an old pickle jar. I like it because it's a little bit bigger than my mason jars. And I'm just using this funnel to make it easier. You just want to pack it down into the jar. You want to pack it pretty firmly, but you also want to leave some headspace. So pack it down into the bottom of the jar, but leave at least an inch of headspace, because it'll start to bubble up and you don't want it to overflow and make a big mess. So I'm just pressing it down into the jar, making sure that any air pockets in the jar get pressed out, and try to keep the kimchi under the liquid level as much as possible. I'm a little bit lax with my kimchi. I don't get super stressed out about everything being submerged under the brine, just because it's such a short ferment. I've never really had problems with it, but if you're a beginner fermenter, you want to sort of follow all of those basics of fermenting, and one of them is to keep everything, all of your vegetable matter, submerged under your brine. So you can see this liquid that's sort of self-brining from the cabbage and the vegetables. You want to try to keep everything under that liquid level. All right, and I have actually popped 2 inches of headspace, but that is perfect. And I'm going to put the lid on it, and I'm just going to loosely screw it on. That's basically just to keep flies out of it, keep dust out of it, dog hair, all of that. But I will, when I check on this every day, I will open it and release any gas that builds up. So this is what I came up with: 3 larger jars and then this little jar which is left over. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to leave one on the counter to ferment, and it'll take probably about 4 or 5 days to ferment, and I'll check on it every day. I'll show you what it looks like. These other jars, I'm going to pack them up and put them straight away into the refrigerator. And then once we finish eating this, depending on how long it takes to eat this, if this has been in the refrigerator for several weeks, then it will have fermented in the refrigerator, just much slower. If we go through this in a week or less, what I'll do is I'll go ahead and take one of these jars and then leave it out on the counter for maybe 3 days, so that it kind of catches up to the point that I want it. And then when we eat through this, depending on how long that takes, I'll pull the next one out. And I will show you this over the next few days. Hi guys, so it's been 24 hours since I made this kimchi and it looks pretty similar. It does have some little pockets of air where the fermentation is starting and it's creating gases. It creates carbon dioxide, so you can see them there. And some of these air pockets might just be from when I packed it down in the jar, but there's quite a few of them and they're sort of large, so I'm going to say it's safe to assume that at least some of this is from the fermentation. And then I'll give you a look down the top. So it's still pretty thick and hasn't gotten too runny just yet, but it looks good. It smells amazing, so I'm just going to put the lid on and let it keep going. Here's the kimchi on day 2, and the biggest difference is you can see the liquid, the brine is a lot waterier than it was. We started off with a paste of the pureed apple and pear and the red pepper powder, and now it's like very watery. So that's what it looks like from the top. And I tasted it. It tastes good, but it's still very crunchy and fresh, which is good for some things, but I want to let this ferment for a few more days, so we'll check back tomorrow. This is day 3 of the kimchi. You can see how many bubbles are forming, and it's very liquidy at the bottom. So if I do this, you can see even more bubbles sort of releasing to the surface. I tasted it. It tastes amazing, and for a lot of people this would be done at this point, especially if you eat it slowly, because it will continue to ferment in the fridge. We eat it pretty quickly and I like it nice and sour, so I'm going to continue to let mine ferment. Okay, and I'll let you see what it looks like on the top. So even though it's very liquidy on the bottom, it's not fully homogenized, I guess, so it is very liquidy down here, and then as it goes up it's more of a paste. So here's what the kimchi looks like on day 4, and some of it's missing. We had for dinner last night a little bit. Tastes really good. So I'm going to go ahead and put this in the fridge and we'll be enjoying it over the next several weeks. So I hope you liked the video and I hope it was helpful to you. Alright, give this video a thumbs up if you enjoyed it, and I'll see you guys next time.
Bye.
Bye.